And welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sandy Hart, and it's truly an honor on behalf of S.A.R.A.H, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope, to welcome you to this really important gathering. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our guests, Stephen and Shawna, but first, let me thank you for being here and practicing reverent listening. Thank you for also keeping yourself muted, and we'll have ample time to hear from you after the film. And if you'd like to remain silent at that time, your questions are welcome in the chat window, which we will be, again, after the call, will be addressed after the film. I want to thank Maureen Jones for being here. She's going to help us monitor the chat and be our support system, our Oz behind the curtain, if you will, for the back end, as well as a dedicated S.A.R.A.H sister. This call is recorded, and although we won't be recording the film, we will pick up the recording again after the film. The film is available on Vimeo, and that link will be sent to you after this call, where you can go there and purchase or rent it. This call is so important to us because everything we do here is to question, here at S.A.R.A.H, is to question or disrupt patterns of domination that do not serve us. We follow the root of any particular issue, and then we go there. And as it is, this topic that Stephen, Shawna, and the team who created this brilliant documentary address can be traced to just about every critical area of concern that we face today. Whether it's the environment, cultural and racial divisions, domination is a systemic cause. Social, and let me add to that, social and civic injustices, gender gaps, consumerism, also the domination is the systemic cause. And Stephen in this film take us right to the root ball. So thank you again for joining us in the spirit of an intention to unmask the domination code. And now it's my honor to introduce first Stephen Newcomb, who is Shawnee on his Edmonds family side, and Lenape on the Newcomb and Kangak. Oh, I practiced this even.
Tonganoxie.
Thank you, Tonganoxie families. Thank you, Stephen. He's the director of the Indigenous Law Institute, which he founded with his friend and mentor, Virgil Killstreet, who was Oglala Lakota. As part of a spiritual movement to address the injustices of U.S. federal Indian law and policy. For 4 decades, he has been studying and writing about U.S. federal Indian law and policy. He contrasts the ecological and spiritual wisdom of original nations and peoples with the patterns of domination and dehumanization used against Indigenous nations and peoples on the basis of the Vatican papal bulls from the 15th century. Many of his findings are found in his book, Pagans in the Promised Land, Decoding the Doctrine of Christian Discovery, which was published in 2008. And of course, he co-produced the documentary that we're all here to see, The Doctrine of Discovery, Unmasking the Domination Code, that was directed by Sheldon Wolfchild, who is Dakota, and based on his book, Pagans. So now it's my thrill to introduce my sister, Shawna. Shawna is, we're just thrilled to welcome you back. Shawna, we've had the honor of hosting Shawna on a number of calls over the past year, including the General Congress of Women, where we address each of the UN Beijing 12 critical areas of concern over a 12-month period. Each one of those critical areas can be traced to the condition of domination as the root cause. Oh, and also I produced a call for the Parliament of the World's Religions, the critical and urgent need to listen to our Indigenous elders, and for the Parliament of the World's Religions with Grandmother Flor de Mayo and Unchi Rita. We had to have Shawna's wisdom and deep knowledge on that call. Shawna Bluestar Newcomb, who is Shawnee Lenape Azteca, is opening hearts and minds as an international speaker and spiritual guide, sharing profound universal messages and guidance to navigate these times of uncertainty and change. Shawna elevates seekers to connect with their authentic power, intuition, and inner wisdom, and transform them so that they can discover liberation and their infinite possibilities. Shawna shares profound insights from her teachings and her courses, the reference code which is based on ancient and indigenous knowledge and sacred feminine rising, healing arts, and immersion. Shawna collaborates with her father to lead a global movement to shine a light on the doctrine of discovery and domination and a way forward through love, healing, and transformation. Shawna has dedicated her life and work to bring healing for humanity, the planet, and all beings, and all future generations. Both Stephen and Shawna's contacts are dropped on the chat window, which you can find there, and also reach out to sign up for some of Shawna's courses, and also find out how you might be interested in bringing the film Stephen and Shawna to your organization. So it is now my thrill and honor to hand this over to Shawna, who's going to open us up and take over the call.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, and thanks. It's good to be back, Sandy. I appreciate all that your organization is doing, and it was very good to be connected with the events, and especially with Grandmother Florida Mayo and Grandmother Jyoti with the Parliament of World Religions. So today it's my honor and pleasure to be here with my dad, and he'll say a few words, but we do like to begin in a sacred way. I really do appreciate the introduction that Sandy just gave, and I'll say a little bit more about that. But I feel a great honor and privilege to be able to share a little bit of my Shawnee or Lenape ancestry, and I have a short prayer in Lenape that I like to share just as an opening for our call and time today. And I want to say it's also brings a lot of emotion to be able to connect with my ancestors through our traditional language because of the domination code and not having our languages accessible to us for so many years. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And we want to acknowledge the original people of this land. I'm happy to hear many of you acknowledging the original ancestors and peoples of the lands that you're on at this time. And we honor our free and original independent existence since time immemorial. We give our deep thanks and blessings to all the people here with us and all of those that attend after. Kuhana Gushelami Wanishi. Okwamiltekekek. Okwamiltelkaminian Wanishi. Wiltek Tamakam. Ichi Kaskalichi. Ichi Kaskalichi. Milinin Wilamasawakan. Wilatanamawakan. Milinin Wiltek Tamakan. Ichi Kaski Ikalichi. Pechi Petausnen Yushienta. Itakanika. We give thanks for all of the good things that you give to us. We give thanks for the waters and the sun shining upon us on this earth. We ask that you bring us good health and happiness, that you bring us a road to walk upon so that we can continue to live a longer life upon this earth. We bless the waters, the sun, we bless the lakes, the oceans, we bless the soil and the Mother Earth for all of the good foods that nourish our bodies, for all the plants and the trees. We bless all the lands, continents, the valleys, the peaks, the mountains, Pachamama Gaia. We bless all animals, birds, fish, winged ones, and all beings of this earth. We bless each other, our dear brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, all people of our human family. And we remember to honor ourselves and each other as sacred beings. We are connected to the earth and to the cosmos and all that is. We know that all things are interconnected and all peoples are interconnected. We're so grateful to be here. We pray for the children and the future generations. We pray for the healing of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, that they are united in deep love, honor, and respect. We give deep thanks and blessings to all the peoples of this earth. May we find compassion in our hearts, love, and come together in the spirit of deep healing for our beloved Mother Earth and future generations. Wanishi, thank you. Just taking a nice deep breath in, just feeling grounded together. I like to do that as well. Coming into a sacred space in this short time that we have together. And as Sandy said, we like to hold a container with this film to be able to offer a Q&A time to really process the film in a deeper way. We could have just say, oh, well, here's the link and go watch the film. And that's well and good. I feel that it's been very transformative and very powerful and profound to be able to come into a circle of understanding with each other. And so I appreciate that we're here in that process today. Um, and I like to begin by saying I have a very deep respect for all spiritual connections and traditions. We want to honor that. And we also like to shine a light on what I feel is so powerful right now and profound, that all of these changes were a lot of really challenging situations, events. Many years we've been in this process where the shadow has been coming to the light in order to be healed. And so I feel like that's what the time that we're in. And this is the very most profound film that I think can really get to the heart of what we're experiencing. As well as an Indigenous person, it hasn't been easy for me to talk about my own spiritual path, but that is also part of, I feel like part of the transformation right now is being able to reconnect with our Indigenous roots, reconnect with the original peoples of all places, all continents, and the original peoples. And what I see is, I talk about the reverence code, and the reverence code being that connection to the original spirituality of all peoples and all lands. That really is the way forward, which is that love and transformation that can bring us together. But if we don't really look at the heart of what has been our source of trauma, that really holds us back. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to look at the bad, I just want to look at the good and focus on let's go forward and healing. And I think, yes, absolutely. And absolutely, if we don't look at the shadow, then it still is there lingering in the background. And everything that has been happening, all of the alarm bells have been sounding in order for us to really take a look at what's been hidden in the closet and hidden in plain sight for decades, for millennia, in fact. So I offer that short course that Sandy mentioned. It's called the Reverence Code Changemakers course, and that is offering people a way to really look deeper. But I see what's so profound about that is people be able to see just how much this domination code, this doctrine of discovery, and all of this work has seeped into every aspect of our lives, from our bodies to our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our sense of purpose, our relationships with each other and the world, and our prosperity, our abundance, and our impact on the planet, and in all ways, our contributions and everything. So, and as well as in those organizations, institutions, as Sandy mentioned. My dad will go into a little bit more of that, but I don't want to go too much further. I'm saying a lot more than I usually do, but I feel like this is just a really good way. It's going to be about an hour to watch the film, and just taking a look, like as we're watching, to just consider the original peoples and that perspective. My dad likes to talk about that, and having the view from the shore, having that ship coming towards you as that original person standing on the shore is a very good way to begin in that, looking in that way. And also, I feel like it really paints a picture in a matter of fact way to look at the deeper history behind the Vatican papal bulls that were issued in the 14th and 15th century, and how that led to a systematic global approach of oppression and suppression in the name of religion and the name of spirituality, which may sound great and good to many people. And yet, what were the devastating effects of that and kind of the shadow side of that? So that's a very important thing to look at as well. And how can we shine a light on that so that we can bring a lot of illumination and healing to what led to oppression and suppression of original peoples throughout the planet? That is also affecting all peoples, no matter what our ancestry and backgrounds are. It's affecting the planet itself. And we're in a dire situation where we all need to come together to have deeper understanding and acceptance and awareness of these things in order for us to really come together in what is the emergency of our planet and our home for all peoples. So I'm feeling very passionate, I guess, right now because I'm just saying so much. But I was on a call this morning with our Mother Earth delegation, and hearing from our grandfather, who actually goes by the name Uncle, speaking about the climate emergency and his experience in Greenland, and the ice melting like has never melted before, and how profound that is, that we really start to listen and pay attention and make differences. So I'd like to share a little bit more when we go back to our Q&A time, but I just want to say that little bit, and I really just greet all of you with an open heart, and I look forward to talking to you after the film. And the film also is sensitive for many viewers. Just keep that in mind. It can bring up a lot of emotions, and we'll hold some space for that after the time of the film. And I'll just have my dad share just a little bit, and then we'll share the film.
Thank you, Shawna. Delawinsa Steve Newcomb, Nulalinda Mele Pauk. My name's Steve Newcomb, and I want to greet each and every one of you. I'm here in the region of the Hashaman, Tongva, and Chumash nations in Southern California, and want to thank all of you for being here. And I'm not going to say much right now because I think Shawna really covered everything that needs to be said. And because the movie is an hour in length, we'll just go ahead right into the movie because it pretty much covers everything that I would be saying. And so we'll just pick it up after the movie. One issue. Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful prayer, Shawna.
Thank you, everybody. And so just keeping your in mind, like your sound. I'm glad to see a lot of people have their sound muted. If you can please mute yourself so that we don't have any background noise. You can do that by clicking mute in the left-hand corner of your screen. And sometimes it helps if you turn off your camera, but maybe hopefully that won't be a problem. But if you care to do that, that's nice. And again, we'll connect after the film. If you have any questions,
let me interject one thing, Shawna. Thank you very much, Sandy, and everyone that helped to put this together today. I forgot my manners there. So thanks. Thank you very much. We're very happy to be here.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Dad. Okay, and so I will go to share the film. Just a moment.
Quite complex. And most people don't have the time or the inclination to do that work. And so I think it's very fascinating to look at those of us, and there are a few of us, like my friend, well, obviously Shawna, my friend Virgil Killstraight, may he rest in peace, and others of his generation. His grandfather, his immediate grandfather, was a survivor of the Wounded Knee Massacre, Iron Hail, a name that he got as a result of the hail from the bullets. And we recently, just to segue for a second, we recently found that through one of the medicine people that the priest at Wounded Knee had delivered the last rites right before the commanding officer gave the order to fire. And that is quite an extraordinary insight as to what took place. It's devastating, horrific. But those of us that have been trying to put all this together, we've it's an ongoing, never-ending process. And so the society at large has been mostly shielded from this kind of information. And it's really, it's very rewarding in one sense to be able to have accomplished this, and all credit to Sheldon Wolfchild and Bill Weiss for facilitating that, to assist with that process, that we were all able to collectively make it happen. And there's a certain kind of magic in that. So I've said enough. I think unless you have something, Shawna, further to say, we could probably go to questions or comments.
Yeah, we want to stay mindful of time and sorry to run over, but we're happy to stay and take some time to answer questions. And I do want to just acknowledge that, as the film stated, but I want to really kind of emphasize is that this domination code, the doctrine of discovery, is still in effect today and is very much a reality within the legal system, within federal Indian law, but it's affecting so much of our world. And as we've stated, how many aspects, it's really that root, the core root of everything that we're seeing that's happening today, and how many things can trace back to that domination code. And that these legal systems, my dad can go into that more specifically if you have questions with that. But I think it's very powerful and profound to really understand that that's really embedded into so much of the world that we're seeing. I do want to acknowledge as well, and it is a horrifying aspect of things, but it's something that I'm passionate about as we're speaking and honoring and sitting in circles with our original peoples, with the Mother Earth delegation. We've had come times where it wasn't necessarily sitting in that circle, but other elders and acknowledging events that have happened that have been genocidal treatment within today's age. These are things that are happening now. It's not like this is in the past. But I think it was last summer, there was a medicine person down in South America that was,
In Guatemala.
In Guatemala, thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. I do have that in my written down, but that was murdered and tortured and burned, basically as seen as like a witch, or these kinds of things that are very, we think like medieval times, and yet it's still happening. And how could people that are within a religious system still have these kinds of thinking and beliefs even now? But this is part of that trauma that continues and lingers on unless we really start to acknowledge and point it out and say, this can't go on. What can we do differently? How can we really see this in a way that we bring it to light so that things can transform and heal? So, and again, we're open to all questions. There's a lot of things as well. I just want to say that one of the reasons why I decided, or I felt like it was called to me to bring forth the course that I offer, the Reverence Code Changemakers course, is partly because people literally were tugging on my shirt sleeve and saying, I watched this film and it changed my life. They would like come up to me and I watched this film and it changed my life. What do I do? And I was like, Dad, we can't just leave them like that. We have to do something. So I have some work with personal development and a lot of spiritual work that I've done with elders. And I guess I feel like there's just a lot of questions that came, and being able to help process to take things deeper. But I think that's part of it too, is how can we really sit with this in a good way that can do the internal work, because it's not just outward focus, it's really inner work that is also part of the big process that we're all going through right now. So any questions, we're very open.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Shawna. Stephen, thank you for this stunning, I think it was put by Dale. It was beautiful, it's horrifying, it's saddening, and it's inspiring, and all of those things. And we're feeling all the feels right now, so much that I almost forgot to continue the recording. So thank you, Phoebe, for reminding me of that. To your point, and it's something we all have to take into our hearts. It requires all of our awareness, and also our privilege with the things that we can do as well. And because this is such a pervasive problem, I mean, the film articulates so beautifully how it's embedded in our language, in the words that we use. Nullify. I will never use that word again. Now that I understand its root and the power and the energy of that root. And also the intergenerational trauma, and as Dr. Rianne Eisler refers to it, as the domination trance, things that we are just walking through and are all around us and we're not even aware of them. So this film brings us into that awareness. So I'll just start the question, and then we can, perhaps you can find your raise your hand. I'm going to invite you to find the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. But let me just start by asking, what what is it that we can do beyond? How can we help to rescind the bull? What can we do? Can we put pressure on our political leaders? Do you have any insight with that? How can we support? I know the Mother Earth delegation is working to that end as well, right? Can we send them our money? What can we do to be a part of that change?
Well, I think that the central thing that needs to occur is for people to become more cognizant of what that language is. And I'll give you an example. And there's always a bit of a disconnect in my view between the way in which these issues pertain to or impact Native nations specifically, and the way in which they impact the earth and all peoples of the earth and all living things on the earth and the earth itself, and the waters and so forth. But there's a sentence in a document from 1975, which is a court ruling. It's called the Consolidated Wounded Knee Cases. And I'm only giving you this sentence as an example of some of the awareness that I think needs to be developed. And it's part of a process. There really is a need for a longer process. That's why Shawna's course is really important, because she's assisting people to go through a process of engagement with the information, but it's more than just engagement with information. It's a different way of experiencing reality, in a sense, in a very profound spiritual way. But anyway, back to that sentence. He said the question before the court was whether the quote unquote Sioux people are a fully sovereign nation. And he said they are not now and have not been for a very long time a fully sovereign nation. So what he is not acknowledging in using wording in that way is the original free existence of the, we'll just use language very generically, the Sioux people, as they were referred to a long time ago. And so they are not now and have not been sovereign, but what that's saying is they are not now and have not been free for a very long time. But unless you know how to read that language of that judge, you will not know how to interpret what I've just explained to you. And so there has to be a different way of understanding the spoken word, the written word, the thoughts and ideas of the language itself, the thoughts and ideas that the language creates in our mind. But how do you do that? If you're not guided by someone who already has that insight and understanding, it would be pretty much impossible to do that on your own. That's why that viewpoint from the ship toward the shore is not the one that we want. We as original nations and peoples, we have to be looking from the shore out toward that ship. And once we get really deeply grounded in that perspective, then we have a totally different viewpoint of how to interpret a lot of these documents, like the Vatican Papables and things like that. I'm being very nebulous and vague here in the way that I'm responding to the question. I realize that, but part of it has to do with the complexity of all that's needed to come to this picture. And if people think they're going to just take the usual and accustomed language and come and just suddenly get this kind of insight, it's not going to happen. See, there's no need to throw away the word null or nullity or any of those words. I often critique the term indigenous, and I say that in the international arena, meaning in the United Nations, the word indigenous actually means dominated peoples within that context. It's talking about a people who are original to a place when a secondary population comes in and through conquest, settlement, and other means establishes dominance over them. So then the idea would be that one day the dominance would be removed. This is the domination being called dominance. And that one day that would be removed. But the way it's treated, this is the gift that keeps on giving forever. And it will always be on. I guess I just thought of that movie Alien and that thing that's on that poor man's face, But anyway, it's feeding off of all of us. And to use an analogy. So back to the sentence. The sentence is conquest renders, meaning makes, the tribes subject to the legislative authority of the United States. Conquest renders the tribes subject to the legislative authority of the United States. When you take that sentence and change the word conquest to the word domination, which is in fact what it is, now you have a new version of that sentence. Domination makes the tribes subject to the legislative authority of the United States. And when you make that shift to frame the whole sentence, the whole conception in terms of domination, you get a completely different insight. Because there's a way in which the dominating society, people raised in the public school system or in the usual and accustomed educational system, conquest is actually looked at as a positive from the viewpoint of the people that managed to engage in that. So you hear maybe some radio talk show host years ago say, "We won, you lost, get over it." Some kind of glib expression like that, right? So anyway, to sum up, I'm saying that we have to have a re-engagement with the language system and have a means of using what I call the domination translator to begin to come to the language in a different way from a different viewpoint that will give us the kinds of insights that we need to create a transformational effect. But that's not enough. We also need original nations' languages to provide something that's completely outside of the Western way of understanding and experiencing reality. And so that's a whole nother part that maybe Shawna can pick up on. But so I know that's a long-winded response to you. And we, considering our constraint on time, that could be a problem. But I think we need the time necessary to be able to go into these types of detailed conversations, because we're using language in ways that it has not been used before. And there's tremendous significance to that. I'll leave it there.
And I just want to say, as far as like donations and that kind of thing, it always helps to support the work that my dad's been doing for 40 years, over 40 years. And so you can make donations directly to my dad. His website is originalfreenations.com. And I don't know if we have that in part of the website or presentation, whatever it's called that you have for us, Sandy. That might be available for people there as well.
It will be.
Thank you.
And I will say along those lines, the more people either rent or purchase the movie and get the word out about that, that really does help, because more people can experience what you just experienced. And the more times that people watch the movie, the deeper that transformation goes. And because it's not the kind of, you could treat it as a movie that you see one time and okay, that was that. But if you engage with it on a deeper level by watching a number of times, I have a friend that's watched it 30 sometimes. That's like, wow. But they are so moved by it, and understandably that it's, anyway. Enough said.
Well, I think I just want to say with that, what's powerful about watching it again and again is that it literally is touching our hearts and our minds in a different way each time. And it's almost like unraveling layers and layers that are just so deep. And I've had, different experiences each time I've watched it. And that's been, I don't even know how many times at this point, but the reason why it's profound to go back and re-engage in it is that it's going to bring new awarenesses every time. It really it moves the heart. I've connected with my ancestors. I've connected the language, I've connected with what Virgil shares, I've connected with deeper insights into the history and how it affects us today. So there's just so many, as I said, if it's the root, then it really just goes deep.
Yeah.
How we can process that. But I don't know if there's questions in the chat or if there's other questions that have been
By
brought
the
up to
way,
you, Sandy.
when people purchase the movie, the asking price is $14.91, just as a little, source of humor.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I've seen the film twice, and you're right, Shawna. Each time it brought something else up, and I just say paying attention, being aware, being considerate of our impeccable with our words and our language, and also noticing what makes us uncomfortable. I wanted to shield my eyes when I was seeing those scenes that were shown, hearing what I was hearing, and I realized, wait, that's my privilege. I don't have that privilege to look away, and paying attention to that and feel that and let it horrify me a little bit so that I am aware of it and can start working on unpacking that for myself and the direct outgrowth that's impacted my family, having been losing a lot in the Holocaust. So is there anyone else who would like to be heard and ask a question or make a comment? And then perhaps that might be our last, or maybe not. Let's see how we're doing on time. Deborah. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, for that.
Hi, Stephen. I met you at the Parliament of World Religions in Toronto and heard you speak there and was really impressed at that time and horrified too at that time of hearing all of this. So it's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again.
See your film. I'm sorry I arrived a little late, but I'll definitely purchase the film and I love the idea of watching it again and again, how it sinks in. I don't know. I feel like I'm not sure I have a question or I have a comment, but so I guess after my comment is to see what you have to say. But I live in Canada, Ontario, Canada, and in Canada through this pandemic time, we've been under quite significant lockdowns across the country, and across the country also a vaccine passport. So some of us that have chosen different paths for our health than the government would have us choose have felt to some degree that we are walking in this minority culture that we've never experienced quite so close to our own lives, so it sort of arrived on our own doorsteps, and to have our own government kind of come against the people because we disagree, and for various reasons, right? And people are losing their jobs, and losing their professional, like they're deplatformed, and all kinds of things are happening now to keep the voices down. And like Sandy, I work with an organization that's really committed to hearing all voices and in the circle process, and that's something that I've worked on a lot. But I think that it's always hard to choose what you spend your time on. And I heard about your cause, and I felt like through circle process and hearing all voices, that was my part of it. But then this sort of somehow this has landed on my doorstep, this dominator culture, I would just say, and or that's how I would describe it. And it's a dominator worldview and of the pandemic, and it does not allow other voices to be heard. And so I think, so all that is to say that I feel like there's a great awakening of people to this dominator paradigm right now, and to challenging this whole system that we've been living under. And if they could do this to people in these times and get away with it in these days, then I think that people are just like, they're really questioning all of the systems, the political systems, the legal systems, all of it. And this is all to say that I feel like it's all in line with your movement of bringing this into awareness of this domination and how it impacted your people in a horrific way, right? So we aren't so removed from it. And you know, even as a white European ancestry person, I'm not so removed from it as I might have been, though it was certainly a sympathizer, I would put it that way for sure. But now it feels more like I've seen like the curtains being pulled back on many of these systems and how they operate. And it was only a matter of time before that would happen, because it's not a system that allows for other voices. It doesn't want to hear your voice. It doesn't want to hear your stories. It doesn't want to pass them on in education and so on and so forth. So it's only a matter of time before it hits the, you know, the rocks in the waters. And it is starting to, you know, crack open, I feel, in significant ways. So I don't know, I just felt to say that to you as an encouragement.
Sure.
It's
I
happening.
appreciate that. Pardon me. I'm going to give you a little a little insight into something. So just when you began your statement, and this is not a criticism, it's an observation,
Yeah.
and hopefully an insightful one.
Yes.
People tend to speak, they've been conditioned to speak, and they say our government.
Right.
And so I forget exactly how you put it, but you said, you know, it wasn't expected, I guess, that our government would blah, 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 whatever it would be. Okay. Now, if people were to correctly understand the based on the patterns you've seen in the movie, that what has been called government is actually the domination system. And therefore, if people were speaking accurately, they would say our domination.
Mhm.
But then that immediately creates some kind of a weird dissonance, cognitive and emotional dissonance, because why would we say our domination? That's because then you're claiming that domination. People have no problem claiming the government because they want to believe they're a part of something. It's participatory, it's democratic representation and so forth. But those are a lot of the, I'm not saying that there aren't settings within which you could say those things are accurate, but there's another way in which you approach this and realize, that's not really accurate. So if you say our domination just passed the military budget of $720 billion or whatever the heck this last one was, suddenly the whole understanding of what's going on is different, because that word domination is being used rather than government. And the word government normalizes it, makes it seem like it's something ordinary and everyday and regular. But as soon as you say the word domination, suddenly you're distanced from it, or you feel like you want to get distant from it. And I think it gives a different kind of insight. Now, going back to what you're saying with regard to the draconian measures and the entire nature of the pandemic and what that has been portrayed as and how that got going, that's a whole nother presentation for another time. I was about to give a talk on that tomorrow night, because I've created a timeline with a lot of insight into that. And but what I think is critically important is that we look at how human knowledge operates. How do we know what we know? And how do we validate whether what we believe is true or what we believe we know to be true is actually true or not? And what kind of assessments can we create in an environment which encourages an exchange of ideas, not to be contentious and argumentative and try to beat the other side down and convince people. By the way, the word convince combines the CON prefix, or it's kind of a prefix, but the term CON, which means a completed state of something, and then vince, which is a victory. So it's a completed state of victory if you convince someone of your viewpoint. So that's a warfare kind of terminology. And we all talk loosely in those terms. So it's a much longer conversation is what I'm getting at. But I'm always shocked at the number of people that I hear constantly saying, our government or your government or whatever, and it normalizes the domination system without them even realizing that there's a domination system in the mix.
That's really powerful. Thank you. I appreciate that awareness. And you just made your point with the language and how just, shifting it
Mm-hmm.
makes a whole world of difference and anchors in, what I would I have no problem calling it that, domination system. And I know that lives in me. I know that I'm decolonizing myself. So it's not separate from me. I'm part of what's created it, and part of what's my responsibility to support its dissolving, I guess, and evolution into well, I always think of things as going back forward. Like I feel like we can't go forward when we've lost and suppressed so much from the wisdom from the past. I mean,
yeah, it's challenging. Everything about the English language is problematic. I have a friend, Ed Littlecrow, and back when Clinton was running for office and he created that meme, "It's the economy, stupid." Ed Littlecrow created a meme, "It's English, stupid." So English it can be a very beautiful language. I mean, it can be, there are ways in which it can be used to express beautiful things, but it is very much when used in nefarious hands and by nefarious people, it is very much a system of domination and designed as such,
And I think I just want to add, I think questioning, those inner questions, the inner reflection again, like these are all part of these times right now. So I think that's, and my dad goes, we do offer that in the course that I have put together, where people are able to really decode and look at these language patterns that are just every day that people just take for granted and use all the time. And my dad has all of these breakdowns of how that's related to the domination code. It's like goes back again to that root every time. And we're just we're not aware of it. It's just there. But I want to get to, I think BB has a question.
Go for it.
can I just ask you, Stephen, is there any way to hear your talk tomorrow night? Like, is it online at all?
No,
Like,
because it's not happening. We had to postpone it. So that's why I mentioned that.
will it be online?
No, well, it might have been. I think I guess I could let I could put out a notice on it. I mean, I mean, if people are really interested and want to hear about it, I could arrange to create a presentation on it. I think it's
Yeah, we could do something like this again.
important enough to do, and it's quite it's just staggering. It goes back. What I do is just to kind of describe it a tiny bit, I go back to a earlier time frame, roughly 2005, in the International Health Regulations Treaty that was finalized in June of 2007. It was basically implemented. If a state government didn't opt out of it, they were just implicated into it, and that created the international framework for a global pandemic response, and sowed the seeds for exactly what's going on now. And so then in 2019, when all this was being rolled out, President Trump created a executive order on September 19th of 2019, which was directing all relevant US government agencies to start working on the mRNA vaccine. And then on October 18th of that year, the World Health Organization, the Johns Hopkins University and the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation created a global simulation, which was in keeping with that treaty. Based on the treaty, there was a number of things that had to occur. And so that they created a global simulation. Then when you go into 2020, in the earlier part of 2020, when the Director General of the World Health Organization, Director General Tedros, declared a global emergency of international concern. That's actually language taken directly from that treaty from 2005, 2007. But then when you look at when he declared that, there were only 98 actual cases outside of China. And so you get into this whole longer time frame, and suddenly you start making connections with numbers and the problematic nature of the PCR test and on and on. It's kind of an extraordinary thing what has happened. And I spent way too much time examining it all, but I think it's only the future of the planet, so it's fairly important.
My goodness. Thank you. Perhaps that's the note we conclude our time together on the important, the insignificance of it. Speaking of how we're using our words, the significance of this, and perhaps thank you. I'm at a loss because, which if any of you know me, know that's not usually a thing, because I'm still feeling the feels and hung up on the magnitude of this information and how it's landing on me like a sonic boom, actually. And may that sonic boom reverberate through all of us so that we have become aware, so that we become thoughtful, thought-full, and how we walk through our day and through our life and the words we use.
Well, it's a strange mixing of metaphors, but let's think of it as I don't even know how to formulate this thought, but something along the lines of a sonic boom of love, because hopefully we can create, the whole point of the movie is not simply to look at what we're against, but to look at what we're in favor of. But how is it that by repeating the same patterns over and over again, you end up with a transition or a transformation to something different? It doesn't work like that. So that's why the original nations' languages are so important. And as an example, the sound law in Lakota means a term of deep affection. So Lakota, Pila Mia, which is a thank you. Wopi La is another kind of thank you. Tunkashi La, which is a term of prayer having to do with the grandfathers. But that sound law is that deep affection for all forms of life. And once we're operating on that basis, when that's embedded in the language itself, then you have an understanding of how important that language is. My friend Jamie LeBrake in the Kumeyaay Nation, they have a term for a greeting, which is hauka. And one way you could say, well, it means hello or hi or whatever, but actually the literal translation is, may the fire within you burn bright. That's a whole different basis of reality than how you doing, or, so we could go on with many others, leha leheok and a holta walk in our Lenape language, and gishelamiang and gishelamokong. And so anyway, I won't go into all that right now, but I thank you very much for your time. I know that this has been an opening to a conversation that may go further, and I deeply appreciate all of you tuning in today. So thank you so much.
I please add my support of talking about the draconian measures
Yeah.
I feel discriminated against every day for not having taken the shots.
Well, you should have made a better decision then, huh?
I'm excommunicated from my Unitarian church where I was very active. I can't even go in the building. And
well,
to tie this to dominator culture is really helpful to me. So thank you, Deborah, for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, ma'am, for bringing up your comment, because I shouldn't make light of it, but you got to laugh, right? So, but it's very, very, it's I mean, it leaves me almost kind of speechless in a way. Let me, I could go on for longer, and if anybody needs to sign off, just sign off, and I'm not offended, and I apologize for taking a few more seconds of your time. But yesterday I was at the hospital over here and getting a prescription for my father, and I happen to have the cover of the box that the masks come in. I have that photographed on my phone. And so I asked to speak to a pharmacist. I kind of enjoy doing this sort of thing. So I asked to speak to a pharmacist, and the pharmacist came. And so then I said, yeah, I wonder if you have read this. And number one literally says that the masks are not to be used for any antibacterial purpose, any antiviral purpose. In fact, for any protection against any disease whatsoever. And yet that's number one, but then number 9 says it's part of the FDA enforcement, according to the, all this and that. So it's a direct contradiction. Okay. And so I'm showing her this, and it ends up in this conversation. She doesn't have the slightest idea, but yet she's willing to believe whatever the CDC has on their website, and she's convinced of, whatever. So I'm only bringing this up because the way in which we go about those types of conversations, I try to make sure that it's very calm and measured and not like, overbearing or trying to be some kind of jerk, but just try to encourage them to look more closely at things that they were not aware of. And I think once we do that, if we can guide people through a thought process with information that they've been shielded from by the way in which information has been suppressed and so forth, I think we'll get much further. And I know there are some people you can't even talk to, just forget it, because they're often they're wherever they're at, and okay, whatever. I guess we have to be understanding of that. But to the extent that we can engage with folks and at least bring some of these other insights, I think that's very, very important. So I'm sorry to go on about this, but I think it's very, very, it's just a critically important time that we're in. And if we understand that these domination patterns that you're seeing in the movie are now being played out in a really significant way, I think that's a pretty interesting connection to make.
Yeah, by all means. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your great questions. And Shawna, thank you for your presence here. And thank you, Maureen, for dropping all these great links in the chat window, including how to sign up for your course. Shawna, proceeds from this call will support Stephen, so we can talk about how to get that over to you. Yeah, for sure. And Shawna, we didn't plan this, but in the nature we always do things, would you be so kind as to close our sacred circle of squares?
Sure. I will probably just keep it short, and I tend to offer my different messages and that kind of thing. But basically I just feel like the messages that have been coming to me, which it's for the longest time I felt very reserved and apprehensive to say the least, because these are the things that have been suppressed and oppressed, where, to say that we have some kind of spiritual messages coming to us, these are things that are not readily accepted in the common everyday Western culture, to say the least. But I feel like that is also a part of the awakening that's happening right now. So many people are having profound dreams and profound connections to ancestors and loved ones that are passing quickly at this time. There's just so much profound change, and just having an awareness that there's something bigger at work here. There is something that is helping us to come into a very big transformation. I have messages that talk about the great shift at this time. People are talking about the age of Aquarius, and here it is, we're in it. And I think it was maybe even like 10 years ago that I received this very profound message speaking about the great shift, and that women are coming into our power, and it's time for us to really look at healing the earth, and knowing that the changes that we're experiencing is part of the good that is here for us, in order to really make the changes that are needed, because it's now's the time, basically. So I usually like to share my messages directly, how they've come to me through hearing and seeing things or visions, dreams. But I just want to really emphasize that there's, as we move through this process, it's uncomfortable, it's delicate, it's heart breaking in so many ways, and yet it's also like really like we're being perfected into this beautiful transformation that really moves us to come into our hearts and our connecting in a much more powerful way with each other. So it's about acceptance of differences, it's about questioning, it's about inner seeking, it's about really the spiritual path that's here for us now. So Wanishi, many blessings, and we look forward to connecting again.
By the way, anyone that wants to reach me can do so at info@originalfreenations.com. I probably should have put that in the chat. And I'd be willing to communicate further with folks about some of the things we've discussed here this evening. There was one other thing. Oh, there are two things. Elaine, I see that you're on the call. Greetings.
Hi, Elaine. I saw you too.
And also I see there's a Wheaton, the last name Wheaton on the call,
That's
which is,
Cynthia.
yeah. And so I wonder if she's at all related to Henry Wheaton. He was the reporter for the Supreme Court at the time of the Johnson versus McIntosh ruling. And so I just thought that was interesting to see that surname on her name placard there. So yeah, interesting. All right, enough. Thank you so much, everyone, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you.
Create with our words.
Thank you, Sandy.
Doing well, Elaine?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the depth of wisdom and love and compassion for humanity that everyone holds in this space, but especially Shawna and Stephen and Sandy. And there's a lot I'd like to ask you, but
Well, I mean, I don't know if people want to sign off right now or if
I could stay on here all night with you, but I think that it's very interesting and timely that a dear Indigenous, excuse me for using that term, a dear elder.
Look,
a
there's
dear
no
elder.
problem. Use whatever terms you want to use.
Yes,
They're all
and
misnomers, so it's no problem.
well, a dear elder that is a wonderful, powerful guide for me, just spoke to me today about language. And I had posted something, and my intention is always to have the words be touching to somebody. But he forcefully, lovingly helped me to understand how, well, I'm trying to remember the exact words that he used, is how Christianized my words can be unintentionally. And I was deeply grateful for that correction, loving correction, because as a writer and an educator, I want to make sure that I'm very mindful of my language. And so that you were speaking of that this evening is, brings more weight to the significance of that. And so I want to thank you both for that. And the reminder of how poetic the original languages of this planet is and are, because they're a beautiful expression of life itself, not a contrivance of a human mind, but a beautiful attempt to put into sounds the beauty of creation itself. And I find that so deeply touching. So I thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. Sandy, am I saying your name right?
Sandy, yeah, I just spell it funny.
So with your indulgence, I feel I wanted to share something real quick here, which is my lyric. What do you think, Shawna? Shall I do that?
It's appropriate at this time. It's good, nice.
And then after that, we'll sign off. So a few years ago, my friend Pila Lorino from Hawaii, my very dear Kanaka Maoli friend, he said, hey, why don't you create some lyrics for the younger people? And I thought, no, I don't know if I could do something like that. And but I started playing with the words, and this is what eventually came forth. We are the Turtle Island nations, praying for all our relations, entirely free originally, forever that way we shall rightfully be, rejecting claim discovery. They say they discovered our lands and our lives. We all know that's nothing but lies, with a colonial design to dehumanize. You can't discover another nation's home with permission from a pope in Rome and rightfully impose a Capitol dome. Kings, queens, potentates, bearing symbols of church and state, claimed a right to dominate. Their ancestors sailed under color of God, divine right to take that was nothing but fraud. We're sustained by our spirituality and our abiding reality. So they've tried to destroy our sacred sites and ceremonial places, but we've held tight. They're never going to erase us from this blue orb of day and night with living waters and sunlight. We pray for all the elements of life. We are the Buffalo Nations, praying for all our relations, entirely free originally, forever that way we shall rightfully be, rejecting assumed superiority. We know water is life for everyone. Decolonize your minds.
Right. Mic drop. That's a wrap. Scott Martinez might want to record that. That is awesome. That is really something. Well done. Beautiful. Thank you. I'm so
Good night,
glad you
everyone.
felt
Thank
that.
you so
Good
much.
night, everyone. Mwah. Much love and
Yeah.
blessings to you all. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.